We got a lot of people registered, so yeah, I'm going to treat it more like a podcast, sort of conversational. So I want to start introducing the guests. Scott Ogden, zooming all the way from New York. Scott's an artist and owner of director of Shrine Gallery in New York City. It's been operating since 2016 in a really kind of a vibrant new neighborhood in, I think, what is it, border of Chinatown and Lower East Side?
Yeah, it's sort of this weird little spot that's Chinatown and Lower East Side.
Right. It's called Two Bridges or something.
Yeah, Two Bridges.
A great sort of new pocket, a lot of younger galleries.
Yeah, exactly.
Scott was born in Oklahoma City, grew up in Texas, got his BFA at UT Austin, MFA at Queens College in New York. An integral figure in the world of contemporary folk and self-taught art, Scott has curated many exhibitions pre-Shrine. I think the first time I saw you showed up on my radar after losing touch with what you're doing was a show of Royal Robertson at White Columns.
Oh yeah, that was like maybe 10 years ago, actually. Eric Parker and I curated.
With Eric Parker, right. And I hadn't heard of Royal Robertson at all. It was amazing. Matthew Higgs sort of toured me through it. And then at the end, he's like, it's Scott Ogden. And we know each other from a little bit. But since Shrine, let me think.
What's funny about that show is Eric and I visited Royal Robertson when we were both getting our undergraduate degree down in Texas. And it was actually one of the first times I bought art from an artist. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Maybe we get to talk about that more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pre-Shrine, more pre-Shrine. This is directed a documentary called Make, chronicles the lives of the artists Hawkins Bolden, Judith Scott, Royal Robertson, Ike Morgan. You founded an artist-designed skateboard company called Make. I think some of the skateboard projects keep continuing, right?
Yeah.
It's also on the website. Yeah. Since opening Shrine, Scott has had a run of well-received shows, really creating an oasis for a certain type of work that is pretty unique in New York. So equal parts self-taught and emerging contemporary, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Sort of connected to what Arts of Life does. So 50% young contemporary artists, 50% self-taught. That's an imperfect word, but we're just gonna use it. Emerging, so shows including Mary T. Smith, Susan King, Sanford Darling, Frank Jones. And then I just was reading about an exhibition presented by the Italian artist Maurizio Catalan.
Oh yeah.
Work of the painter, is it Bernard Ghilardi?
It is, yeah. Wisconsin artist.
Shrine exhibitions frequently reviewed in Art Forum, New York Times, New Yorker, writers like Roberta Smith, Jerry Saltz, Holland Cotter, Barry Schwabsky. So that's Scott. Switching over to Katherine. Katherine is an artist, hugely influential force of nature for many years in the New York art scene, currently based in St. Louis. Katherine received her BFA from the School of the Art Institute, Chicago, her MFA from SVA in New York. Katherine is represented by Canada Gallery in New York and Carl Friedman in London, and Xavier Hufkins in Brussels, probably more. Truly a prolific and internationally active artist. She's exhibited widely in Madrid, Lima, Tokyo, San Juan, with some of my favorite all-time exhibition titles: Voodoo Mayo Ketchup, Done with Xanax, Watermelon World, Strawberry Banana Power Smoothie, and Stupid, Crazy, Ridiculous, Funny Patterns. Katherine currently has work up at the Jewish Museum in We Fight to Build a Free World, curated by Jonathan Horowitz, and Global Pop at the Nanzuka Parko Museum in Tokyo. Her work has been collected in the Carnegie Museum, Rubel Collection, Miami, Brandt Foundation, Connecticut, subject of many reviews, Art Forum, New York Times, GQ, The New Yorker. So.
Thank you. Hi.
Katherine and I share the same gallery, so I've got to sort of follow her work forever, and it represents a kind of fearlessness, specifically with scale and speed. No one really makes as many huge paintings as Katherine. So, but today we're going to focus on a new project of hers. She's back in St. Louis. She opened a new huge space, a new gallery, and it's called Dragon Crab Turtle. Follow it on Instagram.
Check it out.
Oh, nice.
Oh, you've got swag? Amazing. And the current show, she just opened a show of all her artist trades. So it's called Traders, and she'll get into that. But we're going to start with Scott.
All right.
So I just want to touch on like early days, Scott. That there's one thing I know from teaching is people arrive with a lot of taste, strong opinions about what they like before they know what to make. And Scott and I met at Skowhegan, I'm just going to say in the Clinton years.
Yes, a while back.
And I remember you showing me this Henry Darger book. I was probably like 21. I was like, what? What is that? Who's that? But you already had an eye on self-taught art even back then. And I just want to hear a little bit more about how that.
Sure. Actually, the photo that's up right now is a portrait of Prophet Royal Robertson, he passed away in 1997, but we were talking, Eric Parker and I curated a show, I think 10 years ago at White Columns, but we visited Royal together, I think in 94. And you would show up to Royal's house and you can sort of see in the photograph, but it was completely covered in homemade signs, paintings and drawings on poster board nailed out to the facade, homemade window shades, highly gardened. He kept a really tight garden and grew food. And you can see his hat, he kind of made a custom. Everything about Royal was sort of done by him.
Amazing.
He was in the film you mentioned, and sort of a tragic love story where he had 13 children with this woman, and then mental illness kicked in, and he basically sort of scared or forced his family away, and then was in isolation. And that's when art really took over his life and just created, hundreds, if not thousands of drawings, a lot of environmental work for his yard. And he was the first artist I ever actually bought a work from. I had no money in college, but we went to visit Royal and, we bought him groceries, art supplies, and then we ended up each buying a couple drawings for maybe for nothing back then, but it felt like a lot when you're in college for like $100 or $80 or whatever it was then. And that was sort of, I think I knew about Outsider and Art Brut, but I think that was my first introduction to meeting an artist in the field and seeing what they were really doing and actually bringing something home to live with was really, I don't know, it kind of blew my mind, but also temporarily ruined me as an artist. When you see something so deeply authentic and outside of art, you come back and it was confusing a bit to understand how to proceed making work in some regard.
The bar was that sort of high.
Yeah. And he was just one of those people who painted and lived in a visionary space where his dreams, he was schizophrenic, we think. He was never properly diagnosed, but his visionary life was even more heightened for him than his real day-to-day life. So he would tell you about the 50-foot giant he saw on the local highway throwing cars around, and it was real to him. He had seen it, and then he would draw it.
Yeah, let's do some of the work. I remember specifically like these framing devices, everything's sort of vignetted.
Almost in sometimes looks like a TV you're looking into the screen, right. His sort of dream. Yeah.
Are the images moving along or no?
We can keep moving through. And basically, I guess I was going to get we're talking about collecting. I was getting my BFA in Austin, Texas, and making a lot of work, but also just got really fascinated with Art Brut and outsider art and started just consuming books. This is Hawkins Bolden. There's some in the background as well. He was a self-taught Black artist, really not even an artist intentionally, but he went blind age 7 and started making scarecrows to protect his backyard and sort of, he was keeping vegetables by touch. So it was always just, those kind of stories just resonated when I was in college and just, I don't know, I'm still working with these artists today, even though they're no longer living. That's Mary T. Smith. Yeah, and I guess at a certain point, I was using student loan money to start buying art whenever I could at eBay or at weird little folk art auctions. And living with art became something that, I don't know, it's amazing to read about and to see, but then to live with something and watch it change in your eyes over time, it became really obsessive to me. So my house became sort of filled with art. And that's a photo of Hawkins Bolden, the man who was making scarecrows in Memphis, Tennessee. And it just, to me, it blew my mind that someone could.
I'm curious how the relationships form, you know, how you get a kind of comfort level, or is it simpler than I think?
I think you show kind of artists enjoy attention and appreciation of what they're doing, whether it's making scarecrows or painting their dreams. And I think it seemed more intimidating until you got there, and then you start talking, and it's basically they're giving you their story. And yeah, it was all quite simple and just really nice. This is great. That's Mary T. Smith. That painting next to her is actually in my current show, which is really cool. It was amazing to track a work down that's in a photograph. And it's weird. Sorry. That photo, it's funny because that painting, I think I acquired it right when George Floyd was happening, and all of the following, protest and this world movement. And it's weird. I had never viewed her work in context of something like that, but I think with this image of this figure abstracted with the hand up, it's so present now, but it was made in the 80s. This photo was probably 1986. So it's just, to me, I love connecting the dots about her work. Looks deceptively simple, but then it's deeply layered and complex, and it speaks about being a Black woman in the South without being overt, if that makes sense.
What's the material? Is it corrugated?
It's probably enamel and house paint on some found corrugated metal. Yeah. But you can tell she's happy.
There's one sexy topic I want to ask both of you, which is storage.
Storage,
how do you store things? Like, how do you, you must have accumulated so many things.
Yeah, it's a problem.
You're physically driving to these places, and before you had a gallery, I'm just wondering where all this stuff went,
It never had, the walls would be pretty full, but it was never, especially before the gallery, I never had enough money to really go crazy. So it was fairly decided if I was going to buy something. Now having a gallery, it's sort of interesting. I can collect with buying inventory, but it ends up, I can live with inventory, and the house sort of becomes an extension of the gallery in some regard. That's a drawing by Prophet Royal Robertson, who you saw the photo of him. And this is the kind of work I was, trying to buy early on from Royal or from folk art auctions yeah. And what's interesting, certain artists get obviously more valuable, but I think if you're a young collector, there's still amazing stuff to be found for affordable prices by artists who just are still under the radar. And I think that's what appealed to me then, is it was accessible, and I could, have no money, but still buy some art for $100 or $200 whenever I had a little extra money. This is a Susan King drawing. That's part of my own collection at home, but she's one of my favorite artists, based in New Zealand, still living, but she made this drawing, I believe, around when she was like 12 years old, which just blows my mind. The complexity of the characters and this composition of so many, figures and items.
And she's somebody who is sort of recently discovered, right?
Yeah, maybe within the last 5 to 10 years. And then there's been sort of, her work's being seriously appreciated on a sort of higher end contemporary level now, which is well-deserved. And I don't know, she's autistic and doesn't really speak, but you can tell there's an awareness to her recognizing her art is being appreciated. And I think that's amazing for a living artist. A lot of the self-taught artists, they become well-known after their death. It's amazing for someone like her who's still active to be involved in so many shows, and, major artists are collecting her, collectors as well. So yeah. That's one of the signs that was in Prophet Royal Robertson's yard. And as I said, he sort of pushed his family away unintentionally through mental illness. And then he was lonely. I think him being on his own is what forced him to be so prolific. But you can see he made his, like, the equivalent of a newspaper personal ad, but on corrugated metal and wood. Like, he put looking for a woman to date.
Yeah, I love that.
So yeah, such an amazing piece. And that's the piece that was Mary Smith was standing next to in her yard. But there's something, yeah. This is Walter Mika, who he actually works at a nonprofit called Pure. He used to work as an artist at Pure Vision Arts, which is much like Arts for Life. They work with artists with developmental disabilities here in New York to give them the opportunity to make art full time. And we did a solo, I think 2 years ago for his work. But that's Sanford Darling. Yeah, he's an artist who did these memory paintings in the 1960s that he would nail up to the facade of his house. And the whole house became so obsessive that they called it the House of 1,000 Paintings. Like the roof had paintings nailed all the way across it, the window shades, the doors, every inch of the house was covered on the exterior and the interior.
Where?
Yeah. And that's actually a piece that's in the show I have up right now. And that's Ike Morgan, who's in that film Make we were talking about. It's on my website, and that's always free to watch if you ever want to check it out on my website. But he's based in Austin, Texas, and phenomenally prolific and obsessed with the US president, the Mona Lisa. And he just does, if he paints one Abraham Lincoln like this, he'll paint 20. And it's just unreal the amount of work he's producing. And he's an artist I met young, when I was young in college too, and kind of able to buy some work as a young collector when I was like, maybe, I don't know, you're like 20, 21. So I was able to, that's a Scarecrow by Hawkins Bolden, who we were talking about. And and that's a photo of one of Royal's yard, probably at its height in the early 90s, late 1980s. He was convinced the world was coming to an end. We were being attacked by whores, if you can see the bottom sign. He was really out there, but
some of these artists you have a relationship over the years you keep returning to.
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, like I met Royal when I was 18 or 19, and then to have a show of his work last year at the gallery, it's been a nice thread. And I'm also still in touch with Royal's ex-wife and some of his kids down in Texas, and I'm trying to help them. There's no proper estate, so when works sale or they've recently connected with Artist Rights Society, and we're trying to figure out how to include them in Royal's work becoming more well-known, because they don't own much of it because he sold it directly, but they should also benefit from it as it's, however it's used, or if it's shown in books or those kind of things, which get complex with self-taught art world a little bit. That's another Walter Mika.
It's great.
Yeah.
What are the materials on those?
That was oil pastels on like these wood planks that had backing. So like basically oil on plywood, oil stick on plywood. That's a Scarecrow by Hawkins Bolden, and they just blow me away. I mean, in his mind, all of the little adornments on the bottom of the work, you can see pieces of shoe, pieces of naga hide and leather, garden hose. Those were tongues and ears. And then if you see the holes he made, he would call those eyes. And the whole point of him making these objects, which became like all consuming, he made hundreds, was to scare birds out of his vegetable garden. There's just something so pure, and I don't know, it blows my mind a blind man made hundreds of scarecrows that are cohesive visually, and then not intended as art, but obviously are art to us. So yeah. That's a
little bit about, you have this kind of 50% self-taught, 50% emerging, and how that conversation comes together sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know another gallery that's structured that way, but
I think there's others. I know Andrew Edlin and Frank Maresca have all done the same. So I'm actually kind of following in footsteps of a lot of awesome dealers who, when we first met in the 90s at Skowhegan, I was obsessed with Raw Vision magazine, and I was sort of scoping out all the galleries on the back cover in the advertisements. And I think Phyllis Kind was my first job when I moved to New York in like 1998. I became her art handler, and she was a pioneer. She was showing Betty Sayer, Alison Saar, Robert Colescott, but then she was showing Henry Darger, Martin Ramirez. So she was really, pioneering this sort of concept that this is all the same thing while it's still different. The intention of why the artist made the work might be very different than a contemporary artist, but the work is contemporary.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the Chicago Images story, this kind of close relationships with someone like Joseph Yoakum, influencing the images. And
And Phyllis was working with all those artists, Jim Nutt, Roger Brown, Gladys Nielsen, Ray Yoshida. She was showing their work in tandem with, all the self-taught artists they were interested in too. Yoakum, Martin Ramirez.
I heard a story about Dubuffet. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard a story about Dubuffet coming to lecture some room full of collectors, and he's like, "You're never going to get a Warhol. You're never going to get these certain a de Kooning." He was sort of inspiring Chicago collectors to work from a different pool, as a more realistic way, and it sort of had an effect. They really did double down on a certain group. Phyllis Kine was a big part of that.
Yeah, she was amazing, and she was so gruff but so awesome, and I learned like a ton. But I think what's interesting about like artists like Jim Nutt and Martin Ramirez and all those artists, they were collecting what was in their reach. And as you said, Andy Warhol would not have been, but they could go to visit Joseph Yoakum, or I'm spacing on her name, Lee Godey in Chicago, who used to work on the steps of the Chicago Art Institute, and they could buy art. And I'm sure as a young artist, it not only whoa. But I think, you look at Martin Ramirez, you look at Jim Nutt, or even Roger Brown, you can see it in their work. It's their collecting habits sort of infuse their art making, which I think that's so cool. And it's just really interesting to trace it, actually. Yeah.
Vincent, I know we're trying to stay on a time thing. What do you think?
I think we could move over and I could pull up the other images for Katherine. That way we have maybe 10 minutes at the end to try to open it up to questions.
Okay. Thanks so much, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
So Katherine, I got a similar thing. I want to hear just some early days a little bit.
Okay. Well,
you're someone who I associate your paintings with what you love, like swatches and these, more than a lot of other artists. There's a kind of link to things you liked when you were a teenager. I'm wondering, were you a hoarder when you were young?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I've always collected things, not necessarily art, but like what you said, swatches or free clothing or
sneakers,
the rugs, like the Moroccan rugs, and lately huipiles from Guatemala. So I'm a collector, naturally, I love collecting stuff or hoarding it, whatever you want to call it. The rugs were oh my God, I love the rugs so much. How can I collect them and afford them?
Yeah.
So it was more oh, I'm going to import them and then sell them in New York so I can buy the ones I want and keep those and then sell other ones too.
Yeah.
And then, so with the art, so I've been collecting all this. Well, first of all, this place is called Dragon, Crab, and Turtle in St. Louis. I'm in St. Louis now. So I opened this gallery in St. Louis, just basically to do anything I want in it and do shows that I want to do. So this is the second show. It's called Traders. So it's all work that I've traded with people over the past 23 years from New York and Puerto Rico and all over. So we put together.
Currently up, right?
Sorry?
It's currently up.
It's still currently up.
Okay.
So it's basically I have all this work, but I never saw it all together. So I wanted to see it and document it. So doing the show is a good way to do it, so I can see it.
Nice. Have you ever tried anything like this? Getting it all together?
No, there's no room.
Great. I was lucky enough to visit this space a little over a year ago. I think you were putting in the Xanax tiles.
Oh yeah.
They were maybe half finished, but it's gotten a lot more polished. It looks amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Is it a venue? Is it open to the public?
No, it's all just by appointment only.
Yeah. So yeah. I see it. I see some stuff, and Eddie Martinez, Travis Fish.
Oh yeah, lots of Jose Luis Vargas. There's Alicia Gibson, Liz Marcus, Eddie Martinez. There's Matt Connors, Kathy Bradford, Jackie Gendel, Charlie Ramirez, Al Freeman, Joshua Abelo, Ellen Altfest. So basically, I collected stuff with like my friends and people I knew in New York. So I'd trade like a drawing or trade like a small painting. Cause also like I never had any money, so I was like, how can I make art collection? I'm just gonna trade.
Yeah.
So I was always into trading, and I mean I still am. And
What
it's
do you
just
think? What do you think the oldest one is? Oldest trade?
hmm. uh maybe wait, go back to the pictures. Well, that Jason Keeling photograph is really old.
Okay.
And
And
that
then the,
photograph
the
is there.
gummy worms. The gummy worms are from a show in New York.
Yeah, those are from Lieber House. Oh, that
Right.
painting on the screen on the far left up, the cubes, that's really old Rebecca Morris.
Ah, wow. Another alumni.
Yeah, so that's really old.
Nice.
Uh
Yeah, Catherine, someone, I mean, in addition to her art, she's always sort of platforming other artists who are younger and always kind of repping and hyping a huge range of artists since you're so global. I always, anybody who follows her Instagram feed, it's like a fire hose of cool stuff. I don't know if anybody is such a prolific poster of just things that you like and she's always kind of hyping
oh yeah, these
narration. Oh yeah, this is upstairs, right?
yeah, these small works, those are like oh yeah, there's like a real old Stephanie Campos. Did you know her?
I didn't.
Oh, she went to Art Institute of Chicago, so that's from those days. And then wait,
There's
stay
some of
there.
the Moroccan rugs, right?
Yeah, these are the Moroccan rugs. And then yeah, Benjamin Butler, that mountain painting. That's a pretty old trade. Oh, these Kaneko Ivex. That's old.
Yeah. Nice.
So there's some of the rugs. Oh, this is like a G's Bend quilt. I actually got that at the Outsider Art Fair in New York. And let's see what else is there. Oh yeah, so these paintings. Um yeah, they're all like from the past 20 years.
Hmm.
We're writing an essay on it right now, so
Oh,
I wish
that's
I
great.
had it. I could read it to you.
I remember seeing a show in, I think it was in White Columns, I forget the curator, but it was about you reuniting trades because trades always have the funniest stories behind them. So there was a lot of couples who are no longer together. Like I think it was Rick Ratier Venetia and Elizabeth Payton. They put the trades side by side, and it was kind of funny because a lot of the trades come from school, and there'd be a little didactic explaining, you know, I gave her a painting and she just gave me a mug. Mug. But I always think it's funny, like, what did you give the other person? Oh, what's this one?
Oh, that's a David Shrigley.
That's amazing. I mean, for you, was it always painting for painting, or was it,
No, sometimes there's like drawings for painting, or yeah, 2 drawings, or like 1 painting for 4 drawings. Or sometimes it was like 6 paintings for 6 pieces of that, you know?
a bag of potatoes?
Yeah.
Right. It's always interesting to me what the currency is, the barter system.
Oh, some of it, like more recent one is like a drawing for like I get to stay at your house on the beach. And
See, that's amazing.
or yeah, what's
I
another?
traded a drawing for a plane ticket once.
Oh, nice.
Didn't have any money to get home from Miami.
So yeah.
This is great.
Oh, so I would say like I just collect like what I love, like who I was into at the time, or like who I was friends with, but mostly just what I love.
Right.
Well, for instance, wait, stay on that one. Go up. That's so old Wallace Whitney. He threw it in the garbage. I was like, I'm keeping that.
The painting on the ground.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So that's how I collected all my stuff. These Claude VLAs, I traded like 6 paintings for these.
Mm-hmm. It'd be an interesting art fair, just trades, no money, barter.
Yeah, so. Oh, the most recent is probably that Raphael Ferrar painting. The second one, right? Yeah, that one.
Oh, okay, nice. So it
I
just
traded-
keeps going, right?
Yeah. So I traded
it-
like a similar size painting for that Raphael Ferrar from Tito.
Nice. And this compound is sort of multi-use, right? You have your own painting storage. I forget where the studio is, but
The studio's in a different building, but this is like, yeah, the gallery, and then upstairs there is kind of like a loft to sleep in, and then in the back is like all storage and like a kitchen and stuff.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to see Mary Heilman's studio, and it was interesting. She had all the paintings of her friends really snug, close around where she's painting, to like
Nice.
keep her company.
Nice. Well, I was gonna say the Travis Fish painting, the painting on velvet.
Yeah.
Of the Migos
Uh-huh.
guy. I traded him because he took over my studio in New York. Right, I left New York and my lease still had like 5 months or whatever. So I was like, okay, I get a painting every month. This is like one of them.
You all want to open it up to questions in a couple minutes, and then
Sure.
before we do that, though, I don't know if you all had anything you wanted to plug before we went to questions. I think you sort of shared about your exhibitions that are opening up. I wanted to give Scott, Katherine, Tyson a moment if you had anything you wanted to share.
Plug. Yeah, plugs.
Yeah.
Plug away.
Well, I of course would love anyone to come by the gallery. I'm at the front desk almost all the time, and just love people coming by to see shows, especially now during the pandemic. It's awesome to have people coming through and seeing art and still having, I don't know, it's one of the few things you can still do right now. And yeah, I always appreciate people making the trip down. And also, I guess, just if you think you can't collect, I think the reality is, like Katherine's saying, you can buy a swatch and start a little swatch collection. Collecting is just like really, it's not a disease, but it's a sickness, because once you start, it's upset. It takes over. You can't stop. And I think, yeah, art is accessible if you look for it in the right places. So yeah, I just encourage anyone to start doing it if it's on their mind.
Katherine, do you have a next show at Dragon Crab Turtle? I got to practice saying it, but
Yes, so we're doing a small pop-up shop of Moroccan rugs for like a week. And then after that, we're showing Vaughn Davis Jr. He's a local St. Louis artist who I think is amazing. So he's the next show.
That's awesome.
I started a fish gallery in my fish tank called Bubbles. I have a show this Sunday. Narita, Patricia,
Great.
check it out. Bubbles with a Z gallery on Instagram, just to get through the pandemic,
Nice.
I hope Katherine does something there someday.
Before we go into the questions that I think Sarah's prepping us for, I wanted to plug a couple things as well. For those who are unfamiliar, my name is Vincent Uribe. I'm with Arts of Life. We're a nonprofit art studio and gallery supporting and promoting professional practice of artists with disabilities. We have 2 locations, one in Chicago and another location in the North Shore suburbs in Glenview. Our Circle Contemporary Galleries intermix our roster of studio artists with disabilities alongside artists from the larger art community through guest curated exhibitions like the one that Tyson had curated for us. I'll post a link to our current exhibition that just went live February 1st. We will be continuing this masterclass series for the next 4 months through May as we build up momentum for our large annual benefit auction that will take place May 13th. So it's a great place to add new work to your collection at very affordable prices and prices sort of across the field. I think auctions are a great place to add to your collection. So without further ado, we'll post a link to that event in a minute. Our next event next month is going to be on corporate collecting, so we'll share that link as well. But Sarah, do we have any questions related to this topic queued up?
Yeah, so there was a specific question directed to Scott, and how did you learn about Royale? And then to kind of follow up with that, with the three of you just kind of getting started in general on collecting. I know you touched about it like a little bit, but I guess to reiterate any points on getting started.
Yeah, with Royal Robertson, I actually had an art teacher in Austin, Texas, who saw me making these weird little obsessive drawings and was like, you got to check out a folk art gallery in Waxahachie, Texas. This is like 93. So I kind of made a trip to this little small Texas town and went to this folk art gallery, and they had Royal Robertson on the wall along with so many others. And I got to know these people, Bruce and Julie Webb, who have Webb Gallery. And eventually they're like, you should go visit Royal. He's amazing. And so like, I had no money, I had enough for gas. So we just drove down, and just without, you couldn't call Royal, he had no phone. We just showed up. And I think it was all kind of a word of mouth network back then, but I had also seen Royal's work in some books and magazines. So yeah, basically just teachers it was this weird things of like stumbling in an art lecture on Texas prison art or meeting some gallerists who were off the beaten path. And after those meetings, just doing a little research or being pointed in the right direction.
I know one of the questions that came through during registration was if anyone could talk about kind of, for folks who are maybe not as connected with the art community, maybe they didn't go to art school or they're not an artist or whatever, do you start with an advisor with collecting? Do you just approach artists? Do you approach galleries? What are the pros and cons for buying directly from an artist versus buying through a gallery? And how do you all sort of see those relationships and juggle those yourselves as you're building your own collections?
I mean, I think it's cool to work with an advisor, but I also think it's even cooler just to find stuff you love and you want to live with, and buy it because you want to live with it, not because you think it's going to be super valuable down the road, but just to find things that make you happy when you're at home. I don't know. And it's cool if they do become more valuable, which is the nature of art. That just happens. But yeah, I don't think you necessarily need help if you can start finding things that just make you feel something. Yeah.
The only reason I would say you would need it as an advisor is like some of those galleries, like if you're a huge collector, like some of those galleries won't even talk to you. Like you need like an in to like tell them that you're a serious buyer and you really want that or whatever. I mean, I don't even know, but I think that's what they use advisors for.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right.
Right. The middleman.
Yeah.
I mean, artists sometimes have a kind of head start because your peers are artists. A lot of artists have really interesting collections because they have a certain kind of access.
Yeah.
Trades and yeah.
Someone turned me onto this website I had never heard of today. I used eBay forever when I was in college and grad school, but something called, I think it was EBTH. Have you heard of that? I don't know. It's all about like oddities and strange art and objects and stuff. I might have it wrong, but something like ebth.com. I'd never heard of it. And someone commented on Instagram, like, I'm finding amazing outsider art on ebth.com. I was like, oh, so there's all sorts of strange places you can find things now, if you're looking. Yeah.
We got another question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys talked about it a little bit, but I'll kind of ask it pretty directly. With the dawn of Etsy and Instagram and all sorts of online places, where would a new collector start looking to buy art? Another question from Lily was, what do you think the role of galleries is with professionalizing or legitimizing the work of outsider artists and artists with disabilities?
I think what galleries can bring to the equation is some of this work used to trade for nothing, which is how I first was able to collect it. But ideally, if you show it in a contemporary context, in a space where you're also showing hopefully serious contemporary art, it doesn't legitimize it, but it just opens eyes to work that might not have been seen by people. And I think ideally, as a gallery, you can bring, I just love people seeing things they didn't know about, or learning about something that they're interested enough to maybe buy and collect. Yeah, I think otherwise it might just still always stay on the radar if there are not galleries to help highlight it. But there's other ways too, documentaries, Instagram's been wild as an artist or a gallery. I'm sure, like you said, Catherine's always posting, I'm always posting. I don't think my gallery would have survived the first 2 years had Instagram not been there to let me show people what I was showing, because no one was coming.
Yeah, I read an interview with you, Scott, where you're pretty meticulous about manicuring your Instagram feed, and like it's important that it looks contemporary, and the website and everything. All that is still vital.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about the social media. I mean, it seems like a kind of groaner. Everybody's talking about social media during the pandemic, but I think we're all kind of Gen X or whatever. We came up in a time pre-social media where you actually had to travel to go see something. Had to, like Scott, you're driving in your car, putting stuff in your trunk, and
on a map, not your phone. Yeah.
Right, with a paper map, right? So that is shifting things. I'm just wondering how you think about that, or
I don't know. Like you were talking about Catherine's post. I love how you post so much, but there's this weird groove to it all where you're showing your work, you're showing other people's works, you're showing your family, you're built, where you're working and making art. I think, like you said, we are in the curve and probably not on TikTok, but it's interesting to learn how we can, especially during the pandemic, share art or share what we're up to people way far away.
Yeah. Like I have early memories of someone like Brian Ballot walking around with that weird bag he has. You bump into him on the street, he puts a rare art book in your hand, like he's a sort of collector, or that was a sort of very tactile way to just trade art that I kind of came up with, where you trade and he'd give you some ancient children's book and be like, take it. It was almost like selling watches, or it's just funny because Instagram's very removed from those kind of encounters, but maybe you can have it both ways, You probably still hit the road and travel too, right?
A little bit less. I mean, a lot of major Southern artists have passed away, but what's interesting is, it's still happening everywhere. And like places like Arts for Life, Creative Growth, Land, there's all this amazing contemporary self-taught art happening everywhere. And at the studios like Arts for Life, it's accessible. You can buy, I work with an artist from Naiad, which is in Richmond, California, a similar kind of venture. And you can go on their website and buy a ceramic for $50. And it's awesome. It should be a lot more, but they just keep it accessible to bring people in. So yeah, I think a lot of my searching nowadays is actually online, which is weird. Yeah, it's not like hitting the road as much as scouring Google or hearing about something. And
Jack Hanley, the art dealer, was saying it's too easy now. The whole romance of the hunt is gone. Like he's somebody who collected like psychedelic posters, and he just worked really hard to dig up these things and drawing. He's a collector too, but now he thinks it's like too democratic. But I think it's great that it's more democratic.
Yeah, I'm sure we can all attest, like there's a real thrill when you find something and you get it, when there's other people looking for it. There's something really cool where you're just like, I got it and now I get to take it home. There's a real, I don't know, it's still very exciting whenever something like that happens, or a trade you thought wouldn't happen, or any of that. It's
I'm wondering if you could maybe also just touch on like how you see the importance of like buying work or adding to the three of your personal collections versus somebody who is maybe less familiar, and like why not just buy something from IKEA that is like also super affordable and it's like ready to go up on our wall. What sort of motivates you, and what do you think are the benefits of finding something that's maybe a little more unique or that you have to dig for or work for?
I personally just love a hand-touched object. You know, I love multiples or additions and prints, but there's something about something someone made that's a unique item, and you're the only person who will live with it. I don't know. I think there's just something exciting about that, and it changes over time. I have stuff I bought 20 years ago, and I'll still find something new in it walking down the hall. So it sort of evolves in a different way than maybe an IKEA print or, you know, something less unique, I guess.
What about you?
I didn't think I had a collection, and then I was recently, you know, when you asked me to do that show, maybe half of it came from things I own, and I am starting to accumulate and live with more of the work, and it does kind of reaffirm your life, or your it's sort of an archive of all these relationships, and
Yeah.
I think it's really healthy to be surrounded by it. I mean, every kid remembers the art their parents had, you know, like you grow up and there's some larger than life weird poster or something. I mean, it really shapes you. I think it's good.
We have a question from the audience, from Cody, who I'm going to unmute to ask you all directly.
Cody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I was going to ask, I guess for both of you, a little bit, if you could talk about like going from collecting work to showing it, and like kind of what that is like and how those passions collide. Because I think that's always a pretty fascinating place when you have like an artist who collects and those two worlds sort of merge. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I mean, like collecting the artwork and then showing the work you collected?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Or just like, yeah, in the gallery context and a non-gallery context, I guess.
Versus your home, you mean?
Yeah, I guess so.
Right.
I actually never intended to start a gallery. I was just living with art and collecting whenever I could. And I was actually looking for an artist studio, and I found this cool little storefront on Henry Street, like 200 square feet. And it was a store, so I couldn't use it for a studio, but I told a friend about it. He's like, dude, start a gallery. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't know. He's like, look at your house, man. Just do that somewhere else and sell it. And I was like, huh. And I had never really hit me. And then, yeah, I didn't have a gallery history with working as a gallery, or, yeah. So it was a little inadvertent, but.
My idea here in St. Louis is that there's like hardly any galleries. There's like nothing to do and nowhere to go. So I'm going to make my own gallery.
Yeah.
So people can have something to go to or do or look at.
Katherine, are your shows, I know your show now is probably not a for sale show, but are you like with the upcoming shows, are you going to run it like a standard gallery, sell works?
So.
Yeah,
I think so.
That's cool.
Cool.
Yeah, the first two shows were not for sale. So yeah, the next two are.
Yeah.
We have another question from the audience, from David, who I'm going to unmute to ask directly.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Thanks for having this. I feel like actually my question was a little bit answered. I was going to ask like about buying work online kind of, or like if you like what you thought about that. Cause I remember actually watching something with your friend Tyson, I'm forgetting his name, that we play basketball with sometimes. But he like was talking about how he actually preferred buying work online or something. And I like thought that was funny, like during the pandemic, and just like, cause he like was spending all his money basically on art, so he couldn't travel anyways. Like I thought that was funny, and like being in Chicago, like being able to collect like kind of from around the world or something. So I don't know, like if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, everything's online now, so it's way more accessible. And then also I've noticed that at all the art fairs, everyone has to post all their prices. So everything is like there, everyone knows what's going on. I think it's like easier.
Yeah.
And like you said, people aren't traveling, so they can spend money on art. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Home shopping. It seems to be happening. Even art fairs are online, and I guess they're doing okay. I don't know if that's going to replace the older,
Yeah.
but people are bored home shopping on it. Like there's something
Yeah.
about it that's kind of continuing, which is good. It's just
Yeah, I think it's interesting what Katherine mentioned too. Like it's very cool, the transparency that's sort of resulted from this whole experience. Like all the prices are out there longer that cost negotiation. It's sort of, I don't know, I like that things are more labeled, you know what something costs on a digital art fair. I'm doing a ton of digital art shows now, and they're, you know, all types of things. Some are for sale objects, some are just for fun, but I don't know. It's been a weird year, but I feel like there's a lot to learn from and move forward with, even after the pandemic's over.
I mean, it always is better to go see the artwork in person.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you have any advice for what a collector should not do?
That's interesting.
Ask for a discount.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go direct to the artist.
What else? I guess overthink it. Maybe follow your gut, and you know, don't think about it too hard. If you can afford something and it's really calling you, if you don't act, it's going to probably be gone then soon after. Someone else will take it. So maybe trust yourself. If you like it, it doesn't matter what other people think.
From the audience, pros and cons of selling through a studio versus through a gallery, or buying, or you know, you can ask that same question, buying directly through an artist or through a gallery.
I think if you're with a gallery, you really aren't supposed to sell through your studio. But I think if you're an artist who's sort of a free agent, you should do whatever you can, and like people supporting you is awesome. I think people sell art on Instagram now, and I think there's benefits to having a gallery, but if you don't, you might as well just go for it on your own. Why not?
Do you think it deters a gallery if you're doing that excessively as an artist?
I think it's just a conversation you have to have with someone if you're going to start showing them and you know they've been doing that. I think it's just something you should address and just, yeah. I think they would end up hurting themselves.
Right.
Yeah, if I'm like trying to sell something for say $1,000, but they're offering it themselves for $200, it's not going to work, right? They might sell the $200 thing themselves, but no one's going to want to buy it from a gallery. So I think it has to be a tandem effort to work together to.
Yeah. Honesty.
Yeah, just work together instead of like, you know. And if you're broke, I always have if an artist is broke, I feel like you can go to your gallery and there's at least room to talk about something, or you know, I might buy something from you direct just to help you, if, you know, however it works. But yeah.
I wanted to double back. Oh, go ahead.
I was also wanting to add that I think a lot of galleries and artists, people are open to figuring out payment plans. So if you can't buy something for the full on price, I think it's okay to be honest about that and kind of say, you know, this is what, can we set up a payment plan? Some people are going to be open to that. I don't know if any of you have had experience with that, or Tyson and Katherine, kind of like maybe what's your experience with folks who have bought work, collectors who own your work? Do you stay in contact with people? Is that an important aspect of collecting, and that relationship with the artist and the collector? Or is it better to be hands off with the person who's buying or selling the work?
Me personally, I only know like a few of my collectors, and like I don't hang out with them.
Yeah.
I hang out with the ones that have pools in Puerto Rico.
But then the artwork that you own, you know a lot of the artists, correct?
Sorry?
The artwork in your collection, you tend to have relationships with those artists.
Oh yeah, they're like my friends.
Yeah, so there's two sides to it.
I've met some interesting collectors for sure. I mean, I think I used to engage that more when I first started showing in New York. It was exciting to just meet every person. younger collectors, anti-corporate lawyers, all sorts of interesting backstories. But yeah, I think it's a funny thing. I don't think artists hang out all the time with collectors.
Yeah. I don't know.
The basketball collector that Dave mentioned, I want to double back to that. That's a young collector. Maybe he's watching, Ryan Cortman. And I wanted to the question about what collectors should or shouldn't do. I really recommend getting on stuff early, really following your passion. And Ryan I think he bought the first Giuliano Villani painting, like this hand coming into a bowling ball. It's the first painting she ever sold. And this is a Chicago collector. And it's just because he got in there really early, remotely, probably surfing the internet, like aggressively. But I think that instinct to get something when you're feeling it, rather than checking art rank or some of these, checking the value of it, I think it's best to just follow your first feeling on it. And I see that working a lot,
Yeah, I agree. I think also there's that had he not done that, you lose it. You wouldn't have it. I think trusting yourself is something you learn as you see more art, but even as you're starting, you kind of know what you like. If something turns you on and it's $200, you should probably, if you can afford it, you should probably follow your gut instead of sitting on it and overthinking it, because it will enrich your life, which is the whole point of all this, right?
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I think this has been super insightful. I really appreciate sort of these candid answers and the transparency with this, because I know for a lot of folks who've never bought work before or new to buying work, it could be really intimidating. And I think the idea really is, it's more approachable than you think. It's more affordable than you think. So I really want to just give you all a round of applause for kind of being here and kind of opening this topic up for us. We're gonna do another conversation next month on the first Thursday of the month. So I hope you all can join us again. And then in May, we're gonna be doing our big benefit where we'll have tons of work available. So you could buy work from an auction and support artists directly. You could support a nonprofit. You could support multiple people who are raising money for Arts of Life. So thank you all again. And Scott, Katherine, Tyson, I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. So much fun.
Thanks, Vincent. Great to see you both.
Yeah, great to see you guys.
Good luck with the baby, Scott.
Hey, thanks.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Oh, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.